Hello everyone and welcome to another weekly recap. Custa News Network is in session. We obviously had a crazy weekend with the Kickoff Clash happening in both the APAC and the North American region. I was very fortunate to be able to cast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a fun time. Appreciate all the kind words everyone has been sending me. Hopefully I can do it more in the future. But we had some banger of matches and we're going to recap everything that happened in these tourneys to start us off. So let's just get into the brackets. We can talk about them. Actually, let's move this camera down here while we're here. So let's just talk about the North American bracket. San Francisco Shock versus Washington Justice. The Shock, a consistent theme throughout the entire Shock series of this tournament cycle, or this tournament playoff, sorry, was that they just started so slowly. They went down 2 maps for Washington Justice, but did come back in that series with some heroics by Proper. Proper just putting on his carry pants on the Tracer, just dominated them, especially on that New Queen Street. Shock able to get the reverse sweep, but it was the beginning of cracks in the San Francisco Shock, I think, for a lot of people. Washington Justice didn't play a lot of decay. I don't want to talk about this team. I'm done with this team. The team sucks. They came 8th. We'll see what they do in the future. Florida Mayhem versus the Atlanta Reign. Atlanta looked to be a completely different team in this tournament, showing very good performances, looking like they understood how they wanted to play the game. They did play some Hawk Doomfist, but they were also willing to play like Gator on the Winston. Hawk played the Xayah on maps in which like the Dallas to Xayah concept work. So they had a bunch of versatility and looked much better than they were as, you know, the number 7 seed coming out of that like Gladiators. They got brutalized by Gladiators. They lost to the London Spitfire, but they look to be a different team. Florida are good, being very well coached on the back of Goomba, as we know. They played a lot of the dive style with someone on that Winston, but it's kind of like the San Francisco Shock that it just wasn't the best meta read. It was good overall, but eventually got beaten by some of the better teams. So Florida went down. Dallas Duelist, Toronto Defiant. Toronto just were not very good in this entire tournament cycle. I remember Finale came in and played very well. Overall, they just need to play more Finale. Finale looks to be the best player on their team, although he had better performances, but Finale, when he was on that Tracer, that is their best look with Muse. We'll talk about some of the KDG stuff after this recap. But yeah, Dallas Fuel coming in hot. Dallas Fuel are just a very dominant team when they could play Hanbin on the Xayah. They defined the Xayah Reaper composition, but outside of that, they didn't have much flexibility. When they tried to play any form of dive, it just didn't look very good. Guriel on the Widowmaker just did not look very good. But Dallas Fuel were able to, just on that skill of that Xayah composition, able to get over some of these other teams. Gladiators versus Houston Outlaws. Houston tricked me. Jake tricked me with his something cooking up. It felt like it was Moira Reaper. It just didn't really find any value. It felt like they were unable to deal with Tracer players whenever they played that composition. They're able to dive the backline, but any of the good teams, it felt like they were able to just keep their backline alive for long enough. And the Gladiators are just on something different. Absolutely something fucking different. But yeah. Gladiators, I don't even know what to say about them. They're the most versatile. They had the most depth. They were incredibly consistent. They understood how to play every single composition, and they only dropped 1 map the entire Kickoff Clash, and that was to the Dallas Fuel in the next series. Yeah, I guess I can tell the story about Jake in the bathroom of why I predicted the Houston Outlaws and the context of that story that I keep telling. I'm in the bathroom taking a piss. And Jake comes in and he's like, Custa, we got something cooking. We got something good coming up. You should predict us. And I expected the Houston Outlaws to come up with something different because their Doomfist compositions, it works well against weaker teams, but it felt like as soon as they go up against a team that could either match their skill or just counter the Doomfist, they just sort of fell apart. And that's pretty much what happened in the Kickoff Clash. So Jake didn't tell me what it was, didn't want to give me any context, but I believed in him. I believed in Jake only to be fucking led astray. So if you talk to Jake in a bathroom, don't believe his lies is moral of my story. Don't believe Jake's lies. So then we went up to the upper bracket semifinals. San Francisco Shock lost to the Atlanta Reign. It felt like Atlanta they had a really good coordination and the Shock didn't. It felt like they were on a completely different wavelength, just throwing ultimates away, not having great performances. While Atlanta, they looked great, even on the Doomfist Moira. Like, they played the Doomfist Moira themselves, and they just looked much better at the composition. And San Francisco Shock fell. Gladiators played the Dallas Fuel. With the rush compositions, it felt like they knew how to navigate around the Hanbin Zaya compositions, and they were able to just maneuver around the value that the Hanbin usually gets against other teams. When Dallas played the Zaya composition against every other team, it felt like they just controlled the tempo. No one could ever stop the Dallas Fuel horse. While the Gladiators, they looked to be the only team to be able to do it. They played the rush and were just way faster and have seemed to catch the Fuel off of guard on the back of some great Reinhardt play by Reiner and May play by Paddy Pan. Dallas Fuel did take Kings Row, but it was close. We go into the lower bracket. Washington Justice get rolled by the Florida Mayhem, losing to themselves. Happy's having good performances on the Washington Justice, but the rest of the team just not performing well at all. Florida just seemed to be the more coordinated team. Houston Outlaws beat the Toronto Defiant. The Dante Doomfist, the Toronto Defiant just didn't really have an answer to. Toronto just kind of struggling overall in the whole thing. Then we went to Dallas Fuel versus the Florida Mayhem. Florida's good team. They didn't play aggressive enough or with enough confidence. They did try and play the rush versus Dallas Fuel in the same way the Gladiators did, just nowhere near as well executed. Dallas just managed to adjust and deal with anything that the Florida Mayhem threw at them. San Francisco Shock beat the Houston Outlaws with some Doomfist mirror. Kalu showing his flexibility on the Doomfist. They pretty much played the head-to-head, and San Francisco Shock got the better of that one. Dallas Fuel then took on the San Francisco Shock and absolutely bodied the San Francisco Shock. Shock coming off to a slow start. They need to win these first maps. But did they try to play the rush on the first map? Is that what I remembered? But Dallas Fuel they had some touch the spawn challenge. As soon as we got to Midtown and the Shock tried to mirror the Zaya versus Hanbin, it was over. At that point, they had no answer to everything that Dallas Fuel were doing. And Dallas Fuel get an easy 3-0. And this is sort of the beginning of the Dallas Fuel tear through the lower bracket. Everyone's starting to think, oh my God, Dallas feels so sick. The upper side, Gladiators rolled the Atlanta Reign. Atlanta were a good team. Their biggest boon in the Kickoff Clash was that they had a lot of flexibility. They were able to play a lot of things, but guess who's more flexible than the Atlanta Reign? The Gladiators. And with some incredible individual performances from Custa, Reiner, fucking Shu. From time to time, just everyone just absolutely popping off. Just they are the better team right now. Going to the lower bracket, Atlanta Reign lost to the Dallas Fuel 3-1. Dallas just, with the Isaiah compositions, Atlanta Reign just didn't really have a good, consistent answer to it. Did a good job of sending them to Ilios. They put Fearless in, and Fearless on Ilios just didn't really offer enough. Their dive is just nowhere near as good as Atlanta's. But Dallas Fuel being able to get a good Zaya composition on all the other maps, ending with a ridiculous clean sweep of push against the Atlanta Reign on some questionable Kai Widow choices. Then we go over to the grand finals, and the Dallas Fuel get rolled by the Gladiators. Gladiators are just better than the Dallas Fuel right now with their flexibility, with everything that they can play. They didn't play the Zaya compositions themselves, but they didn't need to. They had every answer to the Dallas Fuel, and the Fuel did not have multiple looks in their playbook. If they couldn't make Hanbin Zaya work, it just fell apart for them, and that's what we saw in the grand finals. Not close. Paddy Pan had a great series on that Soldier. He is really the storyline that is being run with for the Kickoff Clash, struggling early on the Soldier, but having great performance in the finals. It seemed like Gladiators just found a way to enable him. Funny Astro was the player of the match. Funny Astro was giga big, especially on that first Ilios map. He got some crazy boops, getting some crazy tempo plays. Awesome to see Funny Astro popping off. So let's talk to the Eastern region, the playoffs here. I will say I was not able to watch as much of the Eastern region. I have not been able to really sit down and analyze these games just because I was, obviously doing a lot for the Western region. But I know sort of the TLDR. Philadelphia Fusion got the win over the Hangzhou Spark. Spark really playing and leaning into the Ash Echo compositions throughout a lot of the season, but they weren't able to make that really work that much, and it felt like they sort of misread the meta. They were so committed to that with Bernard on the Diva and some of that stuff. they just didn't get any traction in the playoffs, and they pretty much fell over. Philadelphia Fusion were looking really good on their rookies with Zess on that Genji, everything else going around that. Just everything they did to get there, it worked, except for against the Seoul Dynasty. Shanghai Dragons got the better of the Seoul Dynasty, but they had some banger of matches. They played twice in the upper bracket semis and in the lower bracket finals. Both of them are crazy matches, but Seoul Dynasty winning the important one in the lower bracket final with a crazy pulse bomb from Prophet to keep them in the game. But Philly were better than Shanghai. It felt like a rock, paper, scissors of Philadelphia Fusion versus Shanghai Dragons versus Seoul Dynasty. Seoul were way better than Philadelphia Fusion, while Philly was able to get the better of Shanghai Dragons. So it was this like circle of everyone being able to beat everyone. But because Seoul Dynasty were able to beat Shanghai Dragons in the lower bracket, they had a much easier time against the Philadelphia Fusion. Something about that matchup, I don't know exactly what it is. I can't speak to that. But it was good. It was good. Hangzhou Spark got knocked out in the lower bracket semis as well. So yeah, Hangzhou just really did not have a matchup to the Seoul Dynasty. But yeah, Philly Shanghai's Kryptonite. That's pretty much it, right? It happened in the North American region with Seoul. Like, so the way Seoul played was better than Shanghai. But the way that... But only just. While Seoul Dynasty was a much better team over Philly, but Philly could also beat the shit out of Shanghai. So it's like the way that those teams matched up. And that's sort of how it shook up. As I said, I can't really speak to the individual matchups too well because I haven't watched them too closely. But yeah. What about Seoul vs. Glads? Well, we can speculate all we want, but that's something that we have no idea of. I would put Glads on number one, and we did in Plat Chat, but it's so hard to compare these teams because they're not... It's not only the fact that we haven't seen those teams play head-to-head, but it's the fact that we haven't seen the teams play against the other teams that they're playing against. Like, I think these top four teams of the East are way better than, like, most of these other trash teams. So it's hard to compare, like, and, like, how many bad teams there are in North America. It's just hard to compare them. I like to keep these regions separated, and we'll see them come together in the mid-season play. So we'll see. Once Fuel scrims non-Zaya comps, Glads is in trouble. That is some hard copium right there from you, Lockful, thinking that the Dallas Fuel is going to be able to practice and get to the same level of the Gladiators. I don't know if that's true. I do not know if that is true. And that is essentially the recap of what happened. Seoul Dynasty getting their first franchise victory, which is awesome to see from them. Prophet having MVP levels of performance, playoff P, absolutely dominant. It was awesome to see. But there was also a lot of good rookies that got thrown in. Shanghai Dragons seem to be a little bit weaker this season, but might be due to some of their lockdown issues. I would say Gladiators are the best team in the world right now. But that's it for the recap. Let me talk about some of the other stuff that isn't the matches. Awesome to have a live event in Dallas. It was really fun. The crowd was absolutely incredible. It's cool to see those guys. Got to see Bren and Josh catch up with those guys. They're doing well. Yeah, it all went pretty well. There's nothing to really be too upset about. No, everyone didn't seem to get really sick, which was nice. Do you see the celebration of Seoul where they all just go hug Prophet? Well, it's because Prophet deserves it, right? Like, he's been so dominant for so long. You know, it's awesome to see him have success on Seoul. We've seen him have success in the London Spitfire in the past, but absolutely popped off. Frozen back room. That's kind of like, that's not a big thing. The body pillow. The body pillow was, okay, so let me give context to the body pillow while we're here. So I got a body pillow from chat. So I'm actually blaming chat for this one. I can't remember who gave it to me, but in like 2018, I got sent a Mercy body pillow. In my PO box, I opened a PO box. I got a Mercy in like the first round of my PO box. I got a Mercy body pillow, a chocolate penis, which was delicious. I got like a kilo worth of saltine crackers, which is just a big box of saltines. It was like 1,000 saltines. I got what else did I get? I got an actual dildo. I got a pink dildo. I got a bunch of things, and that's why the PO box was closed. So most of those things got thrown out except for the Mercy body pillow. I don't know why I held on to the Mercy body pillow. You never know when you need an emergency Mercy body pillow. We'll put it that way. But essentially, I had it in a box. I had it in a box that ended up going, that ended up moving. So when I moved to the house that was like the content creator house where it was like me, Bren, Jack, Kurt, Wyatt, Jake, we were all in that house. When I left that house, I actually left a box under the stairs which had the Mercy body pillow in it. So fun fact that I ended up tweeting out. Jaws asked the question about how weird it was that I had an emergency Mercy body pillow. But Jaws has actually had the Mercy body pillow for the last 2 years and still has the Mercy body pillow. He says he's holding on to it to give it to Bren and Josh in the future. But funny how that didn't come up in the Nova Watch podcast or whatever the content piece was. So that's what happened. Don't hold me accountable. I feel no shame of having a Mercy body pillow. It was a gift to me. Holding on to it every night, exactly, yeah. The plot thickens. It only gets deeper. So that's what happened with that. But we obviously talking to the Nova Watch content piece. That was a lot of fun. That was kind of Jack's production, his baby that he produced. I think he did a great job. It's a lot of fun. I hope we do it again. I think it did pretty well. So it was a cool thing to see. So let's talk about some other things that happened in the week so this doesn't go for too long. Vancouver Titans, they dropped Flubby, Pugh, their coaches. These guys were held very heavily accountable with some of the failures that came with the Vancouver Titans in this year. They've been around ever since the explosion of the Vancouver Titans in 2020. They have been the coaches of the Vancouver Titans. I think a lot of people gave them passes because of the emergency signings. They weren't able to pull together a good team. They don't have a great budget. But at some point, the coaches need to be changed, and they are. They've finally been switched, so Flubby and Pugh are gone. Interestingly enough, Psycho also got dropped by this Vancouver Titans team. There seemed to be a team decision to drop him. Didn't really make sense to me. I feel like that we didn't see enough of Psycho to justify dropping him. Like, I don't really know why he was dropped. They have Mira now who sort of fills his role, but yeah, it felt like a weird decision. A lot of the players were outspoken about how they really enjoyed playing with Psycho, so we don't really have context of why this happened. But the big change is Depe coming in as the head coach for the Vancouver Titans. Obviously a storied head coach from the Gladiators since the beginning of time. The Iron Shoulder, genius behind the wheel of that team, creator of the Sadiators. I'm really curious to see what Depe is going to be able to do with this roster, because there are a lot of people who really like Depe. He is a smart guy. Every time he's spoken out, seems to have great understanding for Overwatch, but he never really led that team to the crazy amount of success we expected for them. They always had a pretty good roster, and he never really elevated that team to the next level. So I think this is a really good challenge, because we've seen other coaches that we've glorified in the past, like Packing 10, Goomba, what he's doing with the Florida Mayhem. Packing 10 from what he did with the 2020 Los Angeles Valiant. Depe is now able to pick up a lot of good talent, have control of a weak roster. I'm curious to see how high he's going to lead this team too, because this is the real challenge. If you can take a trash team into a successful team, I think that is the greatest thing and one of the greatest achievements you can do as a coach. Because some coaches have been incredibly successful, but you can just sort of look at their roster and be like, well, the roster really carries it more than the actual coaching ability. So a good pivot for that, let's talk about KDG. Vancouver Titans. KDG has been riding off of the success that he had on the 2020 Philadelphia Fusion, a team that was incredible, had a crazy roster, and I think a lot of us put a lot of success of that onto KDG as him as a good head coach. KDG has been dropped by the Toronto Defiant. This is just fresh off the press. This happened today, 2 hours ago. KDG got dropped by this roster. We know over the last couple of weeks there's been an enormous discourse between Muse on that tank role finale. There's rumors that they wanted to be traded. There were trade requests. They were then disproven. We don't really know what the truth is or who to believe. all we know is that there's been discourse within the Toronto Defiant, and this seems to be their decision as management to drop KDG. And we don't know anything about KDG. We look at his prior success, and that's why we are excited about him. But I've never heard from KDG. We very rarely talk to him. We haven't heard much context of him as a coach. When someone gets dropped, usually a lot of things come out. And I think Logic's tweet to this drop is the most interesting. Logic's tweets, "Thank fuck, took you long enough." Whew. Sheesh. Logic's not holding back with that response to that one. Obviously, we know that Logic's was a part of the Toronto Defiant last year in 2021 when KDG came in and Logic retained his contract. Obviously, some bad blood between those guys. It'd be interesting to see what happened. It's interesting to see if anyone else will pick KDG up, because obviously the Toronto Defiant has fallen apart. Moby Dick is going to be picking up the interim head coach. It got announced by the co-owner, I believe, the Toronto Defiant. Moby Dick will be stepping in as the temporary head coach. Will we see someone come in and take that role? We'll see. We'll see. That is some spice that has happened. What else happened? I don't think that's it. And that's really a lot of the big things that happened over the week. There's obviously some small things that go by the wayside, but we're trying to keep this concise. So, let's keep moving on. Power rankings. Oh, no, I didn't talk about the Molly drop. That's a good one. There's the other one. Guangzhou Charge has dropped Molly. So we haven't seen Molly play much for the Charge. I was excited to see Molly play. I think he's been very good when he's ever been able to play. But they signed Farway. They signed Farway as a flex support, and we've pretty much exclusively seen Farway. And Farway's been good. Like, I don't think I'm not calling to see Molly. So it's cool to see that he got dropped. The rumors are, if you want to believe Halo, which feels like a shot in the dark at this point, but it would make sense that the Los Angeles Valiant are interested in Molly. We could see him be picked up instead of Coldest. I think that'd be a really good signing. I think Molly is better than Coldest. It would make sense. It would make sense why Molly would be dropped if he is going to go to a different team.
Wobble, wobble, motherfucker.
We'll see. Time will tell. So, let's talk about the power rankings. So everything, this is what we were at last time. I think a bunch of things have changed. Dallas Fuel obviously need to come down the rankings. Gladiators need to go into number 1. I think the Atlanta Reign need to come shooting back up the list. Obviously, Atlanta Reign had that terrible week, and that's why they fell down the power rankings, but they deserve to be higher up here. San Francisco Shock and Dallas Fuel. The way I'm going to do these power rankings is that Dallas Fuel is going to remain in second. I think that I am a little worried about them with their dive and their versatility, but I think they were just better, drastically better than the Shock and the Atlanta Reign in the Kickoff Clash playoffs, so they need to go in second. I'm actually going to move a tier break, and I'm going to put Gladiators above everyone else. I think Gladiators are just way better than everyone else right now, and I don't think any of these teams were going to be able to touch them. So I think Gladiators need to go there, and I think I'm confident in that moving forward. I want to put a tier break between the Houston Outlaws and the Florida Mayhem. Fuck, I'm running out of tier breaks here. So I think I want to put Atlanta Reign, Shock, and Dallas in their own tier of their own. I think this is about sits where they should be. So then we go a tier break. I think I'm going to put Toronto up here. I think I'm going to do this. Oh, does that make sense to put? So we got Houston is going to stay at the top here. I believe in the Houston roster more than the Florida roster. As much as Florida were playing well, I don't think Houston is that poorly of a coach team. And I think I just want to put, I think I believe in Houston more than I believe in the Florida Mayhem right now. As much as Florida is very well coached and they perform very well, I think as soon as, now that we're on a break, I think Houston's going to be able to go back to the drawing board. A little bit, oh, fuck. Do I believe in Houston? Them not having a Winston or a Reinhardt player scares the shit out of me. And that's the thing, is I think they just have this gaping hole. They have this gaping hole in main tank. I think I'm going to put Florida above, just because I'm trying to look to the future and give Houston Outlaws credit for the quality of roster that they have. Piggy Ryan wasn't bad. What do you mean Piggy Ryan wasn't bad? He got sent to the fucking Thunderdome by Hardy. He got diffed in a half. That was not even close. I think Houston need a main tank. The fact that they're just not willing to play Piggy on Winston, and what we saw of Piggy Reinhardt is not going to be good. For the quality of roster they have, they just need someone to be able to step into that role. So I'm going to put them below Florida for now. I'm going to put Toronto below Houston, though, because of everything that's going on internally with them. They just don't seem to be stringing it together, but they still don't get above London Spitfire. I'm going to put Washington Justice below London Spitfire on my power rankings just because I think it's funny. No real reason. I'm a little worried about what's going to happen with the Washington Justice with no Decay. It's happening once again where Decay is just not playing. And we're like, why is Decay not playing? What is the reason? How did we end up here again? Why? Just play Decay. Like, I don't understand what's happening with that. And for that reason, if I don't understand it and they are once again sucking, I cannot put my faith in them. London Spitfire have been good on the rush, but I just think London Spitfire have no versatility. It's just kind of funny to put them up here right now. If they can play rush again, remember we have Baptiste buffs coming in. They can play the rush again. They're very good at it. Backbone's great at the May. Hardy's great at the Reinhardt, but I think if Rush is just not good, which I don't think it will, like I think Rush will be fine in the next patch. They'll probably be able to get away with just playing that again, but they just they're just one tricks and a half. Like they people are like, oh, London played a pretty good dive again. No, don't care what you. London did not play a good dive. They played a good dive against Boston. Whoa, boy, good job, guys. Hit the showers. All right, then we go into, we're going to do a tier break between these guys, and then we're going to go, I'm going to keep this as it is. Boston, I think, have looked better, but they don't deserve to be in the tier break above. Paris has been struggling, but I don't believe in New York Excelsior right now. Talking about enormous holes in their roster, NYXL just has like 9 of them. They just, even in a meta in which they should have been able to just put Kellen on Winston, Yaki on Tracer, and Flora on Soldier, and like Myeonbong on Ana, I argue his best hero, they still sucked. It should have been, theoretically, the best meta for New York Excelsior's roster, and yet they still sucked. Which gives me no hope that they're going to be... Like, are you telling me that they're going to be able to play Rush? New York Excelsior can't play Rush. Absolutely not. They don't seem to have any coordination. I just don't believe in them. It's just, they stay at 19th. Paris has been making adjustments, but they haven't impressed me enough. I think Paris had a hard schedule. I think they could potentially move above Boston, but we'll see. And Vancouver Titans remain firmly, after a tier break, at the very bottom. They just dropped all their coaches, one of their players. They were the worst team. They have yet to have a win. They don't move at all. NYXL needs KDG. Kuki's getting exposed as a coach. I just think that their roster is bad. I don't know if you can just blame Kuki for what's happening. It might be that whoever put their roster together, they're just so many holes in their roster, and I just don't like it. All right. Let's talk about the Eastern region. Seoul goes to number 1 for sure. Spark goes to number 4. And this becomes the argument. I like Philly over Shanghai.
Wobble, wobble, motherfucker.
I like Philly over Shanghai. I think Shanghai I think you can excuse a lot of the issues that Philly had of like getting rolled in the grand finals because of just being rookies. And I think they've made some mistakes. I haven't seen the enormous amount of flexibility from them, but something about Shanghai is just not clicking for me right now. And I'm going to put them 3. There's no tier breaks or anything like that. But yeah, I think this is where I want to go. Seoul needs to be 1. Fusion number 2. I believe in Philly more than I believe in Shanghai. And Spark needs to stay at number 4. I don't like what Spark has been doing with their hero selections and their metas. I feel like they gambled on the Ash Echo. It could have worked and they could have won. And, you know, they were number 1 seed in the regular season, so you need to give them that credit. But it felt like they got a little bit exposed in the actual tournament. So I feel they haven't lost the map to Shanghai. Yeah, and that's it, right? Like, we said it's like a rock, paper, scissors, but I think this one is the closest rock, paper, scissors that we can do. Most of their wins have gone to map 5, and yeah, and that's it, right? Like, that's why I don't believe in Shanghai. It's a culmination of things. I can't point to one individual issue that Shanghai has. It just feels like their dive is not coming in, you know? So then we have a tier break. I'm putting Los Angeles Valiant over Chengdu. I'm remaining it like this. Valiant beat Chengdu last time they played. Jinmu is just lost in the sauce, and then Guangzhou stays at the bottom. Another team that has not added players. They have lost players after going 0-6. Did Guangzhou win a series? Actually, maybe the Guangzhou won 1-5. I think they won a series, right? Jinmu is fucking awful. Jinmu's biggest problem with Jinmu, and we said this, and this was the thing that Aprita was supposed to fill. They beat Valiant. That's right. That's right. Jinmu, if he's in a meta in which he can play Genji, and their team is able to play Genji, he looks fine. If he is able to play Pharah, and they, for whatever reason, they play Pharah, he's fine. Other than that, he just can't do anything else. His soldier's not very good. Leave is just better than him at everything. He just creates this massive hole, and it feels like because of how he plays, it feels like it forces the team to play a different style, and that's one of the biggest reasons that they're fundamentally flawed. Yeah, like, and that's it. Like, we were in a Genji meta as well. Like, it only gets worse from here. Like, what happens if the meta becomes, like, double sniper, right? Like, is Jinmu's Hanzo that good? Maybe. But it just feels like they can't string it together. So Chengdu Hunter stays there. Time will tell how well they will end up doing. So that's going to be my power rankings going into it. Obviously, we have a 1-week break, so these will not change going into next week. I guess this is probably the end of this recap video. That is everything that I wanted to say. I hope you guys enjoyed the Kickoff Clash. It was a lot of fun. As I said, being able to cast was a fucking awesome experience. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up this new weekend. We're going to go into a new patch. Going into next weekend, we'll see a lot of different heroes. I will probably not be doing a recap next week unless a bunch of things happen. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of, you know, everything that happened this weekend. What do you think of the homestand? What do you think of the teams? What do you think of the metas? Anything that you guys want to let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. I'll be doing some VOD reviews over the next few days. Probably not a ton of them, but we'll be doing a few. If you guys want to check those out. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.